Okay, back in Washington, D.C. I'll try to keep the camera steady. I had some complaints on the channel about the shaky camera. I'm sorry. It's kind of hard to walk and hold it, and I don't have all the, the technical guru stuff of camera stabilizers at my disposal, so I just use a iPhone. But I'm walking over to meet some people right now, and I put out on Twitter and to some other people, and many people are aware, it was put out on True Pundit last night by Thomas Paine, that the case brought against the 12 Russians for hacking the election, that the 12 alleged GRU Russians linked to Vladimir, pretty much that whole case and the language of the case is plagiarized directly from George Webb's civil lawsuit that was filed, I think, over 6 months ago. It's a lawsuit I also personally served Imran Awan a few weeks ago before his trial. So all the language in that lawsuit, which was written by a guy with no legal training, he's not a lawyer, anything like that, just a citizen, based on research and information provided by a large group of citizens that have followed and researched and dug into details and bills of lading and ships and travel and fake companies and murders and drug smuggling and human smuggling and you name it. There's massive gigabytes of information stored in a very productive way. It's a whole case, and so many people have contributed for 2 years to put this case together, and it was put together, and it was written by another citizen journalist, George Webb. And I know there's always something going on the internet of people fighting about this, but the reality is that case was written and filed as a civil complaint against the Awans spy ring in Congress. It was also served, several cases were served to the DOJ brass, Rod Rosenstein, to the FBI brass, McCabe, Mueller, Comey, Strzok, whatever you want to call him, Lisa Page, and the Awans. I'm one of the people that I personally served Imran Awan, and I have that on video, and I sent that out several weeks ago, right before his hearing. We were looking for him for months. I've been to each one of their homes in an attempt to provide service. I've talked to Jamal Awan, one of the brothers involved. I met a guy that identified himself as Omar Awan, who's also known as Abid Awan. At the time, he would only identify himself as Omar, which is curious because an Omar Awan works here in Congress. And I've attempted on my channel to find Omar Awan here in Congress, the office he's supposed to work at, numerous times, and have been sent kind of on a scavenger hunt looking for him. No one seems to know where he actually works or how to get hold of him, who he really is. So all of that's gone on, and then I finally was able to locate Imran Awan working at Chris Gowan, his attorney's office, a couple of weeks ago. And I had a civil lawsuit, and I served him on camera. He identified himself as Imran Awan, and as soon as I tried to hand him paperwork, he pulled his hands back, and so I just let the paperwork fall because he wouldn't catch it. So, and told him he had been served. So interesting enough, the 12 Russians getting indicted yesterday, if you look through the documentation, many parts are literally word for word of the civil lawsuit filed against the Awans for them hacking Congress and their spy ring. The only difference is the Awan's name were removed, and by Mueller's team, the Russians' name were inserted. So, massive case of plagiarism. And it's also curious because this George Webb, before, and this lawsuit was attacked on CNN, New York Times, I believe Washington Post, as right-wing conspiracy theory. He's not right-wing, but needless to say that it was attacked, and now they use the very words of this large document and lawsuit in a criminal trial. against these 12 Russians in an indictment. So that must mean they've actually entered this into the court system. That would have to include some either signature or swearing in to the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help them God. So very curious that they would use the same exact language, or pretty much looks like a cut and paste job by the Mueller team, especially when they've been spending $18 million and have the best lawyers in all of the world working on this. And literally this document was written by citizen journalists and a large amount of citizen investigators who've uncovered all this stuff. So I'm in DC now to do some follow-up on that. I think anyone that's interested, you can pull a copy of the case, both cases, and you can see how much of it is the same, if not just pretty much all of it. And what does plagiarism mean for attorneys who would enter this as evidence or as truth, those words? And people can look into that. What are the ethics regarding that? What is plagiarism? What does it mean for top law enforcement officials in our country to be involved in acts of plagiarism, and then to assert that those facts are attributed to a whole nother cast of characters that conveniently fit the narrative they are trying to push, especially after the disastrous day that Mr. Peter Strzok had on Capitol Hill in front of Congress 2 days ago. And then suddenly, out of the blue, this case shows up of these 12 random Russians from Russia that would never be able to be pulled into court anyway, because we have no extradition, but they use the same language that was involved against the Iwans, written by a citizen journalist. So it looks like a sudden copy and paste ordeal has happened here, and we are going to expose what's really happened. So that's why I'm here in DC, and we'll be meeting with some people. And I hope that Representatives Jordan and Nunes and Trey Gowdy and DeSantis and Gates and all of Congress, Mr. Goodlatte, and I name those guys because they're the ones that seem to really be pushing for the truth. But I would hope that all congressmen, Democrats alike, would be very interested in how this event occurred, and would earnestly look into it on behalf of the American people and stop the games that have been going on in this city for quite a long time regarding the Russian investigation. So checking out for now, and I'll check back in later.